Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inspired Podcast. This episode is a really special one for me. Today, I'm welcoming Gina Fedeli on our call today. We're having a really great discussion about what it takes to be a true operator in a business. And as a founder, how does that relationship with that key COO, how does that work in a way that is super successful and brings out the best in everyone? So I'm so excited to have Gina on this episode today. Gina is a strategic leader who effectively drives vision with operational efficiency and role clarity amongst any founder's team. Having served as a strong COO herself and an owner of a global solutions provider prior to founding her company, P3 Transformation, Gina knows which levers to pull to profitably move businesses forward. This is a fantastic topic, very important for many of our women listeners who are building businesses as entrepreneurs on their own right, or perhaps, in corporate, imagining that moment that they can move over to be in that position of full-time founder. This is going to be a very insightful conversation for them. So thank you so much, Gina, for joining me today. It's so great to have you here.
It's wonderful to be here. So thank you for inviting me, Andrea.
And full disclosure, we worked together. So I feel like I know a little bit about what it is, not a little bit, but a lot about what it is that you do so effectively across a multiple of my businesses. So I love the fact that we have you on today, that you and I can talk a little bit about that, what has worked, and also more broadly, what you're seeing out there with the different types of businesses that you're serving, and how women sometimes we get in our own way. Sometimes we do our best with what we have, and sometimes the industry is just not shaped for us. Sometimes it's not. It doesn't quite fit exactly all of the beautiful feminine energy that we bring. So I'd love to unpack some of those topics with you too. So let's get started. So tell me a little bit, Gina, about your background, because one of the things that I think is so interesting about your experience is that you have worked in some industries that are very male dominated. Tell our audience a little bit about your experience and how you kind of got to where you are now, and what was that like for you, in a man's world?
So it's interesting because the industries that I've worked in have been male dominated. So I was a chief operating officer and business partner for a managed service provider and did that for 8 years. After that, at the end of that, I should say, is when I decided it was time to go out on my own because I wanted to do things differently. And that's when I started P3 Transformation. And it was definitely a journey in learning to be a woman, a leader with 100 people reporting to me, obviously in tiers, not all directly, but 90 of them being men. So
wow, 90.
I was managing
90%.
I was managing up to men, and my team was really all men because it was the tech space.
Right. So, how was that for you? Was there a kind of a bro culture that you needed to kind of fit into? Was it a company, were you lucky enough to have 90% of very, men, stepping into their feminine energy every day? So how did you manage it?
That was definitely not the case. I had an amazing coach, much like you're doing for women. And I had an amazing coach that really taught me how to communicate differently and how to shape my words, how to shape my messaging, at times how to shape my body language. She showed me how at times I was being too assertive, and that assertiveness was not being met with action. It was being met with a wall, and how that wasn't getting me the results that I needed. She then showed me how at times I was being too sweet, and that wasn't the way I needed to manage, right? So
too assertive, too sweet. Okay.
Yes.
So we can be too much of all kinds of things, I've learned.
Yes.
It's hard to find like that. What's that sweet spot? And what's the sweet spot that most of your direct reports are going to respond to? So did you find what that was?
So I would say my journey became about learning to read others and meeting them where they are. So my business partner, the way that I needed to communicate with him to get results was very different than the way that I would speak to the people that I was working with or in the team. I really learned to start to adapt to who am I speaking with? How can they hear things? So it was about learning other people's insecurities, what their triggers were, and I still do this today. It's one of the ways that I communicate with all of my clients, really learning to meet them where they are so that they can hear the message, and adapting how I communicate with each person, men and women.
Right. Well, and I think that's a good point too, because a lot of times in these conversations, it's tempting to put men and women into these two separate buckets, when in reality, people are complex people. And
Yes.
what they bring to the workplace every day, who knows what happened on the way to work, who knows what they were dealing with. There's a divorce they're going through, or perhaps, a financial issue that they're trying to manage at home that you don't see. And so, I do think meeting people where they're at is and as a communicator too, I mean, I have so much respect for that. Such a powerful way of communicating so effectively to that individual versus collectively as making certain assumptions. I think that does require a lot of emotional intelligence, a lot of emotional balance, even within yourself, though, to be able to recognize where the need is with that individual. Was there work that you did on yourself that kind of helped you get to that place?
So, a couple of things that you hit on just to address all of them. The one thing is, I always remember that people are humans before they're employees. So,
Hmm.
exactly what you said. They walk in the door, they're not forgetting that they're in a custody case or have an ill parent or a divorce or bill issues. So, they bring that with them. So, a lot of times people speak of, being careful, work and business and keeping things very separate, but you need to know the whole person so that you can communicate to that whole person and remembering that they have their own stuff, right? So, how do you communicate with them? And to your point, that balance piece, it is tough. I realize in myself when I'm getting out of balance, I see it in the way that I might be too commanding, too direct, to all these terms that are used in how I can communicate because I've gotten out of balance. So I really need to try to work on how am I centered
Hmm.
to be present in the conversation with the person that I'm with and remember that they're dealing with their own stuff. And sometimes it's remembering just how to ask for something because some people don't want to be told. Most people don't want to be told. They want to be asked and they want to be consulted and they need to feel valued. All things that we all feel, men and women.
Sure.
So remembering to come from that place and remembering where they might be present at the time. Often we're working with people and they have their own insecurities or they feel like they're failing or they're feeling that like they're not doing what they need to do. So you don't want to amplify that. You want to get them out of that insecurity if you can and make them feel valued and appreciated. And then you could get more results from them. And it's that open listening.
Yeah. No, that's so true. The imposter syndrome, the insecurity that often slips in a work environment, we don't talk about often. And I mean, we talk, I mean, the founders in my circles with founders, we do talk about it. Imposter syndrome. If you're growing something and if you get into a certain level, how do you get to the next level? You got to work through that. But in a corporate environment, it comes up too, for sure. You've got someone, maybe an employee who's looking to be promoted and, am I good enough? Do they see my value? I mean, there's all kinds of insecurities that can, questions that can play into someone's mind. So I'm just really glad you brought that up. One thing that you know about me as an entrepreneur who's worked with me, I do believe, and I believe that a lot of founders would say this, that it's our responsibility to show up as our best self every day, in every moment, in every decision. And that in and of itself takes some practice to get to. And the way that I've chosen to practice that is through my spiritual path, which I do talk about in this podcast sometimes, but like and really exploring the spiritual side of me, and creating some space for that intuition to come up, for being able to be present to make decisions that are in a really quick way without being reactive or without being going into that stressful fight and flight moment, right? Where I'm like now biting someone's head off, right? Because I don't have any, we don't get to do that. That's not, if we do, it can be very damaging. So maybe tell me a little bit about, and we've talked about this. I mean, you know, I'm a little bit woo woo.
Mhm.
Do you find that other founders that you work with are as well? Can you tell if they are? Do they practice that spirituality at all?
They're all different. They're all different, but they're coming to the table with their stuff, right?
Hmm.
So I have one CEO that I know when he's getting really stressed, I can hear it in the way he's speaking. And I know some of the personal things that may be coming up for him that he's referencing just because I can pick it up in his tone and some of the words that he chooses. So I won't necessarily hit on what I know is the core of it, but I'll be mindful in how I will walk him or work him through that scenario because it's based upon what's coming up for him. With you, I know I've said to you at times, okay, this is something you might need to process. So step away, think about it, come back, go to a yoga class and come back for it.
Go
And
put your feet in the grass. I think
put
you've
your
told me
feet in
to
the
do
grass
before.
and get grounded. Yes. So it is understanding that piece for each person and understanding what's coming up for them. Even there was somebody that I was just working with. We just did everybody gets half a Friday off. And this one gentleman said, no, thank you. I don't want it. And his manager was explaining to him, but this is what we're doing for you. So you need to take it. And I stopped the whole meeting and I said, help me understand what you're feeling right now because you've told me you're overwhelmed. You told me you don't have time in your life. You told me you don't feel appreciated. So now this has been done and you're rejecting it. So why is that? Talk me through that. And then the next day he came back and he said, thank you for extending the offer. I graciously accepted.
What do you think that was? Do you think, is that just an example of how we sometimes get in our own way? We just,
He wanted to be seen as somebody that was helping the better
uh-huh.
good. And in his mind, taking time wasn't helping the better good, but
Mm.
he needed to have a light on the situation to say you are helping the better good when you get more balanced and you stop coming into work as angry and as overwhelmed. So this is a gift. Please take that gift and then you can show up better the other 4.5 days.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, honestly, one of the biggest ahas that I have learned in all of my years of entrepreneurship is when I figured this out. When I figured out this, I feel like it's a hack, honestly. I feel like the meditation work, the creating space for reflection and really to dive into kind of that intuition, what is what are we all really here to do? Because sometimes I can do all the research, I can find all the facts, but at the end of the day, the team's also going to have to trust that if I make a leap of maybe it's a little bit of a leap of faith, but it's a leap
Mhm.
of faith based on a strong intuition that matters. The intuition
Yes.
it's real. And so I honestly think that this is it's a massive hack. I mean, for any founder out there, if you're not leaning into your spiritual life, I think you should. That's just my personal take on it. But I think that I've even encountered CEOs that I've worked for in my career that do that, but don't talk about it because it's seen as
Mhm.
maybe too woo woo, or I don't know. Maybe people won't get it or understand, or maybe employees will lose respect for their CEO if they know that they're sitting there in the dark, meditating with their Buddha statue, or I don't know. But I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? Have you seen that at all play out?
What I would say for you, for me, for other women that I've worked with, we seem comfortable in saying, I'm going to give some intuition here, or I'm going to
Yeah.
use gut, or I'm not really even sure why I'm saying this, but I know it's right. So I'm going to say it. And we appreciate that about each other. I don't experience that too much. I mean, most of my clients are men, which I think is very interesting, right? Male dominated industry. Most of my clients are men. So I think there's something in there in how I communicate with them. I don't find the instinctual side to be as strong of a muscle when I'm dealing with male CEOs. Men seem to be much more data, and women seem to have put the data and the intuitiveness together, which when I speak to male leaders, that's one of the reasons why they want female leaders on their team
Yeah.
because they
Interesting.
know they
Yeah.
know that they are missing some of that well-roundedness. So I have founder
Oh.
CEOs that have said to me, I know this isn't politically correct to say, but I'm hiring for XYZ roles. I would prefer women in that role because they balance out what we don't bring to the table.
That is interesting. I mean, it's
Yeah.
encouraging too, in a way. I'm not sure that the fact that that is becoming more seen as a value in the workplace, it certainly, I think, is more in that now than it used to be. That was not necessarily um, a value. Not only that, but women were having a difficult time making their way to leadership positions. It was always the impression sometimes, and I've talked to many women, leaders in corporate who's like, there's only so many spots. The impression, at least, is like there's only so many spots. And once these spots are taken, it's like, and so, that's interesting to hear you say that. I like that trend, and
Mhm.
hope that it isn't just selective spots, but that more broadly, this is seen as a value in the workforce, not just for women to bring to the workplace, but men can bring it too. I think if they're willing to go there. But yeah.
But it's interesting, the CEO that I'm referring to that has said that to me, He's done a tremendous amount of EQ work. He has a
Mm.
coach. He's taken the time to understand what his limiters are, what's getting in his way. He's taken the time to learn how some of his messaging doesn't land. He's always going faster, go faster, just get there. Why don't you understand? And now he's understanding that's not getting him the results. So my point is he's leaning in to learning how to communicate differently and adapt what he's saying. So that may have some play in that as well.
Yeah, no, that's huge. Have you ever encountered, I mean, talking about this inner work, a lot of times in my experience, the inner work brings up stuff that may or may not be aligned with like the outer work. And I bring this up because you're in such a position, close position to that founder. It's almost like, and maybe this is also something you can speak to and how you balance this, but it's more than a role. Like it's, I don't know how I explain this.
You're a
It,
partner.
yes, it's a partner,
Hmm.
it's a thought partner. But in order to be an effective thought partner, it's important to know what's going on behind the scenes,
Yeah.
what's going on in front of the scenes, and then and any other added context that would make all of that make sense. And I know that in my experience, the more I did the inner work, the more things on the outside, in some cases, were becoming misaligned. I know that for me, from my experience, that the more of that inner work that I did, there were moments when I was like, okay, we're going to need to make some decisions here with the company, or we're going to have to make some pivots. And, you understanding that, understanding where that's coming from, also the timeline for when this might happen. I mean, you sit in that place of such that important thought partner and well, partner in all things really when it comes to building and growing the business. So tell me a little bit about what your experience has been when you've been in situations like that. I can't imagine.
So I would say there's two sides to it. Number one, the first shift normally is when they decide to engage with bringing in a fractional COO and having that thought partner. That's the first realization of maybe I can't do this all by myself, or I'm
Hmm.
too far into the weeds and I want to make a shift. So that's already the first part where they're figuring out there's a shift and a change, right?
Hmm.
Then you get into this relationship, and sometimes there's conversations, and I've had them, the crucial conversations that come with being in the role. Sometimes it's things like, okay, I understand you, Mr. Miss CEO, are thinking about making a shift. Talk me through how that really aligns with the values we set 6 months ago. 6 months ago, you said you wanted these values, you said you wanted this strategy, and you wanted this outcome. Now we're talking about this. How does that align? Are we completely pivoting? Or what's going on? Because I've had CEOs go, all right, hang on. I just need to take a beat. I'm starting to lose myself. So hang on a second. Or I've had CEOs say, or founders say, you know what? We do need to shift. I've seen a market condition. Something's going on. So yes, we did say this 6 months ago. I need to reevaluate. My point being, it is having that crucial conversation because sometimes it's a gut check. Hey, you've got a lot going on in your personal life. Is this really what your intention is? Do you really want to make this shift? Or do we need to take a beat and revisit it again in a few days and see what that outcome would be? So it can be go both ways.
Yeah, and I'm smiling because you and I have had many of these conversations. So, so yes, many of these conversations, and you've had great patience with me as my intuition brings up the next thing that's about to happen. Yeah, I can. That's so key. I mean, having any founder who doesn't have that tight, relationship with that COO or that chief of staff or whatever you want to call that role is like that is so critical for growth. I think if you're listening and you don't have that role in place, really think about that and really, really consider what that would look like to help grow your business. It's not just grow, but like I think for me too, it's growth, but there's blind spots that we all have. Having someone in a position that is seasoned enough to be able to be like, bring up the hard questions sometimes. Or, wait, sometimes you don't want to, some of the things you don't want to hear, but that need to be said. So key.
And
Yeah.
the other part that I would highlight is that women are born collaborators.
Yeah. Oh,
Right?
true.
So women like to get in and talk about it and get a different perspective and hash it out and understand. So if you don't have that, if you're running the business as a CEO and founder and everybody in the company is reporting to you, a couple of things can happen. One, you're not getting the perspective. So
Hmm.
you're not maybe making the best decisions. Two, maybe you're bringing it home, probably not the best place for it. Or three, you're sharing it inappropriately with people that shouldn't be shared with.
Oh,
And
that's a good
that happens a lot off that
Yeah,
happens
that's a good
often.
point. Sure. Yeah, it's such a good point. I wanted to address something else that I think I've heard you talk about this, and you had a LinkedIn post recently, one actually that you talked about, you just posted about that plays a little bit into this relationship, but like that idea of, strong leaders and, there takes a level of, I think, humility, I think, maybe to do this, strong leaders really needing to understand all aspects of each other and the complexities of what we bring, because we're not just who we are when we show up to work. We're not just who we are. We're not a separate person when we go home. And then, so share with me a little bit about what your thoughts are there, because I know that you've recently posted some things on LinkedIn that really, reflect kind of the thinking there.
I think it's remembering exactly what you just said. Understanding the whole person, understanding what their drivers are, what their experiences are, what they may be going through at the moment, because all of those are factors, whether it's personal or professional. They're all factors that lead to how somebody is reacting and maybe the decisions that somebody's making. So I like to make sure that working with a CEO or working with anybody, understanding what's going on for them, what's coming up for them, what's happening in their life personally, as well as understanding where they've come from.
Hmm.
Because all of those factors give us a broader understanding to their perspectives, to their interests, to where they're trying to get to. Some people are trying to build a business because money is really important to them because they grew up never having it. Somebody else is trying to build a business because they want to make a difference in the world and it's not about money. You have to understand why are they doing what they're doing to best support them.
And I think it goes the other way too, right? I think
Mhm.
that the opposite is true. That the founder understanding the highest value that the COO wants to bring to the organization and where their strengths lie is such a great opportunity to let them lead in that way without having to get in the way of that.
That's with everybody. I always use the phrase, what's your unique brilliance? So asking someone who's amazing at communications to spending time analyzing data, is that really where their unique brilliance is? Is that where they should be spending their time? So let's leverage people for what they're uniquely brilliant at. You're going to get the passion, you're going to get better outcomes, you're going to get people that are, the company or the environment where people start speaking of we, not you need, you want, we're doing this because you're having people in doing what really feeds their soul.
Yeah, I want to bring up something that you and I experienced kind of earlier on in our relationship that kind of relates to that I think is common. So just want to put this out there for anyone who might be in this situation or might be considering this. But when you came on, you're in the operations. You are in it. You see the systems, you see the structures, the people that are going to be necessary to get this through to the end on time and on budget. And I am seeing the vision, right? Those are two kind of very different animals. So, we did one of the things our organization does is a Kobe A assessment, and there are all kinds of assessments out there. Kobe A is just one of them, but Kobe A happens to measure a few different things, and one of them is your quick start. So, how quickly do you have an idea and you just want to get it out there? Which for me, and pretty much just any other founder out there, entrepreneur, your quick start, I'm going to guess, is probably pretty high. It probably almost doesn't
Yeah.
matter what industry you're in. It's likely that you have a pretty high quick start. So, and I do, and you don't, because
Yeah.
because it's about the method of getting it done on time, on budget, in a way that is very predictable, that is effective and efficient. And so there's many considerations along the way of
Mhm.
that. So it is common, right, that these two roles they are different and require sometimes different decision making styles, which can be like require a conversation sometimes. Well, sometimes I'm like, "Ah, we gotta move, everybody's gotta move so fast." Like, okay, but the train doesn't move that fast, and so we need to somehow figure out how to adjust each other's expectations so that we can kind of meet in the middle on that. Do you have anything more you want to add to that
So I remember us having that conversation. You were
Yeah.
saying, hey, I'm getting a little frustrated. You're not moving as fast. And my response to you was, my job is to protect you and to make
Right.
sure that I've thought through everything. So we had a conversation and I said, okay, I will tell you where we have the risks. You'll tell me what you're willing to take on and we can move faster. So what I've learned, I'm in a situation right now with a CEO and we need to bring on a new managed service provider. They have budget constraints. So I could get them the top managed service provider that they need for all their tech needs, but it's outside their budget. Or I could get them somebody with inside their budget, but I don't think that they're perfect for what they need. and we have to make a choice. So that's where I was. I was like, hey, this is where we are budget. Let's pick this person. Let's keep them for a year and let's shift. Not the best plan, but it's adaptable. Let's adapt and move. So to your point, what I learned is I outline the risks, let the CEO let me know what they're willing to take on, and that can modify how quickly we can move.
Yeah. No, it's great. And then that's as long as there's clear communication on both sides of like, I'm going to communicate the risk to you. I'm not responsible. You're responsible for making the decision. And then the CEO has that ability to like move quickly, make the decision. And then we're off to the races. Whatever the outcome is of that is on them, you know? But yeah, I think I think at the end of the day, it's also just recognizing, like, going back to like different skill sets, different strengths that we all have and that we bring into the organization. But I mean, I think that's a really high profile or a high level one that it can be really good or it could be really frustrating. But knowing that, knowing and going into that relationship ahead of time, I think with everything you just said, I think is fantastic insight for somebody who's, considering bringing on that second into their business.
And I would add, if you're thinking about bringing the second into your business, you want to think about where, like, I consider myself to be a people COO, people
Hmm.
first and foremost. So I focus on people. How can we develop them? Are they in the right seats? Are they getting the recognition that they need? Do they have clarity? There are other COOs that you're going to get that could be all focused on the bottom line and they're not concerned about the people. They're just worried about the numbers. So if a business founder or owner is thinking about that, they have to think about where their values are aligned and make sure that the person that they're selecting has those same values. We're back to values alignment again.
Yes. I mean, it's
Yeah.
huge. It's really everything, honestly.
Yeah.
Sets the tone for the culture, sets the tone for the types of people that you bring in the organization, and then not to mention how you operate it. Yeah, it's huge. I want to pivot and ask you a question if you could think back to like the younger Gina.
Okay. Okay.
So you've learned so many things along the way. I mean, we've even talked about it here in this conversation. There's like three different learnings that you've brought up, and big ones, over the course of your career. How does meaningful leadership look to you now compared to when you started in your career? How's that definition changed?
Meaningful leadership for me is making a difference in people's lives. I just recently had someone that worked with me years and years ago who just started developing an organizational framework that he's building. And he wrote the tribute to me. And what he wrote in the tribute was that early in his career, someone took the time to look at all of him and understand where he was coming from, what his challenges may have been, why he was where he was, and mentored him to become the leader and the man that he is today. So to me, I don't want my tombstone to read that I worked a lot or I made a lot of money. I want
Hmm.
to make a difference in people's lives. And that's mentoring, helping people grow, see something differently. And often it's really crucial conversations, and you have to have a tough level for that to be able to deliver messages to people that they don't want to hear, but they need to hear.
Absolutely. I mean, arguably, that might be the most difficult aspect of leadership. What do you personally hope to be known for after doing this work you're so dedicated to? And you do it so beautifully and very, very well. Your ability to really focus in on people first is obvious. I mean, you got to meeting people where they're at, all of the experience that you've had along the way with different types of leaders, different types of employees. You've seen a lot, so it makes sense that's where you come from. And is there something else that you feel you personally want to be known for in your industry, even beyond that, and your legacy?
For me, it always comes back to the people,
Yeah.
helping CEOs and having one say, I grew my business from here to here because of, and how did we support them? But more so, it's someone that took the time to have that difficult conversation, remove the obstacle that might have been getting in their way, or giving them a different way of looking at something so that they could get around a situation that was getting in their way. To me, it's really making a difference with the people. The result is the business. The
Yeah.
result is better profitability and growing the business for certain. But you get stuck if you don't pay attention to who you are as the whole
Hmm.
self. So
Absolutely.
that's really where I get my value. And that's the work that I want to do, is making the difference in the business leaders. It results in a stronger business, but it starts with them.
I love that. I love that. So, a few last questions that we ask all our guests. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of business advice that she wasn't ready to hear yet, what would it be?
One piece of business advice.
Or really could be any advice, to be honest, because we've talked a lot about how we don't really compartmentalize our business and our identity and our interpersonal communication.
I'm going to give you the raw response that comes up. Don't let people tell you you're too much.
Oh,
If
yes,
they tell you you're too much, then that is about them, not about you.
totally. Like, I saw a meme the other day. I'm like, you don't want too much? Well, then go get less. Like, it's not my problem.
I would say
I
that
have
would
too
be
much.
the biggest advice, just not trying to shrink because people tell you you're too much. Just realize that maybe you're not in the room with the right people.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. If your business and life or life had a theme song, what would it be?
Unstoppable?
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. It was right on my brain. Oh my gosh. I knew it. Yep, that tracks.
But
Okay, and last, what's the one thing that you'd love for women to feel by the time they turn this episode off and go on with their day? Is there something you would leave them with, a feeling?
leaving them with a feeling. I would say to be your authentic self. Be mindful that words matter.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be attacking in how you speak, but be clear in how you speak. And then you don't need to be apologetic about that.
I love that. Yeah, standing in your own truth
Yep.
and just being clear about that. We can't apologize for our own truth.
And just to be mindful, I know myself, when I get stressed, I can get flipped and not necessarily as nice in how I communicate. So that's the piece I need to work on. But the message of what I'm trying to say is not the issue. Sometimes it's the tone I take. And that's a piece that I still have to work on.
Mm-hmm. As we all do, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Gina, for joining. It was so great to chat with you. And it's always fun. It's always fun to chat with you. And now we get to do it with listeners and other people getting to weigh in on your experience. So I love that so much. And yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was wonderful. Take care, Andrea.
Thanks for joining me on today's episode. If you'd like to explore what your life could look like when your business and life are aligned with what you're really meant to do, get a business audit. I'll personally review your business, look at your social accounts, and give you some precise direction on what's working and how to create even more impact and income. Simply go to andreadelacerda.com, navigate to work with me, and select the business audit. Again, that's andreadelacerda.com. Work with me and then select the business audit. And if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe. That way more content like this can be shared with you as soon as new episodes drop. Thanks so much for joining again. See you soon. Take care.